Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second Ben and Bran See a Movie thematic extravaganza. This is Ben and Bran Presents Wild Wild West.
This is, I figured you'd just like throw the theme song in here.
Oh, yeah. Should I like orchestrate like a whole new one?
No, what you could do is take our old one and just give it like strings instead of like, just take it and then just change the instruments to make it sound more like Wes Anderson-y.
Okay, I could give it a shot.
I think all you'd have to do is just change the instruments.
I'll see what I can do. Maybe maybe what you're hearing right now is our normal theme song, or maybe I put in some extra effort.
Perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ben and Bran Presents the Wild Wild West. And
this is yeah, well, we didn't even decide who's going to explain what this is again.
I got this, so let me kick that off again. That's easy enough.
All right, how about you field this one?
All right, perfect. In honor of March Madness, we are taking 64 Wes Anderson characters and pitting them all against each other to determine who is the best Wes Anderson character. And it works exactly like March Madness. We're going to have a ton of brackets going on, probably about 12 to 16 a day, just as March Madness does. We're going to be doing it. We're going to be polling. We're going to see which character wins that round. They'll keep going. I believe it's through 7 rounds until we get to the last person.
7 rounds. Wow.
Yeah. The last person standing. What we're going to do is we are creating a bracket. The time you hear this episode, the bracket will be out. It will be shared on my social media all over. It will be on, I know I'm in already communication with the the Wes Anderson subreddit, who will be participating. I know there's some members participating there as well.
Nice.
It's going to be out. You fill it out. You'll have about, I think, approximately 5 to 6 days. The date to submit and where to submit will be on the bracket itself. Submit it there via email, DM, however you want to submit it, however we allow you to submit it.
I figured that a good way to do it would be Instagram polls.
Yes, but I have a few. Don't worry, I have that set at all.
Oh,
so
okay,
just
cool.
Cut that. Don't worry about that. And with that all said, we have a prize for the winner for who gets the most correct and who gets the most points in the Wild Wild West bracket. And let me read you some of the prizes. We do indeed. And the prizes for this year's Wes Anderson basket include a few Blu-rays. We have the Royal Tenenbaums Criterion Collection on Blu-ray, the Grand Budapest Hotel Blu-ray, Isle of Dogs, Fantastic Mr. Fox, both on Blu-ray, and a book called Accidentally Wes Anderson, which is a great coffee table book about just people going out in the world taking photos that just have the aesthetic of a Wes Anderson film. So that is the prize bucket, plus a few other just small goodies in there. So submit it by this date.
Just a whole bunch of red vines, not in like a package or anything, just like individual unwrapped red vines.
Yeah, I'm actually putting them in tinfoil.
Oh,
so they travel
You're going to rewrap them yourself?
Yes, personally rewrapped by Ben Friedman. But yeah, Get those out to us, submit it to them. We'll be keeping track, and whoever wins the prize. So it's March Madness. You guys know what it is. But how are you going to determine who's the best without seeing the movies? So for the next few weeks, we're going to be covering every Wes Anderson film from the beginning, Bottle Rocket, to the most recent, The French Dispatch, correct. So with that all said, welcome to Wild Wild West. I know that was a long explanation, but let's go. So Branson,
here we are.
We're in this.
Yes. And we're starting Wild Wild West from the very beginning.
We are.
Of Wes Anderson's career with the 1996 film Bottle Rocket. It's a crime comedy film directed, of course, by Wes Anderson. We're going to be saying that a lot in the following months. And this is a screenplay by Anderson and also Owen Wilson. And this film was based on the 1994 short film of the same name, also by Anderson. This film is the first debut feature of both Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson. And they co-star with James Caan and Robert Musgrave. This film initially released on February 21st in 1996. So this film is about a year older than me, a little bit older than you,
about 2 years older than me.
A year older than by what I can't remember how I started that sentence, but you get what I'm saying. And then this film was made with a budget of $5 million. And at the box office grossed only $560,000. So by all accounts, not a very successful movie in the box office. But you know, this movie set up, I'm sure, a lot of the coming career for Wes. And it generally received pretty positive reviews. I think it was just one of those cases where it was reviewed really favorably, but it just didn't find widespread appeal, which, you know, can happen sometimes, which is always sad, but, you know, he made something out of it.
Mm-hmm. And with that all said, this film doesn't become particularly popular until Wes Anderson becomes a little bit more popular with Rushmore a few years later. This kind of has the same effect that, like, let's say Christopher Nolan Following doesn't become a film that people know until they've seen Memento. Then once people have an established idea of who Christopher Nolan was, that's when they go back and revisit it. Kind of the same thing here with Anderson. It certainly had an audience upon release, enough that he can then get a Bill Murray in Rushmore. But it's definitely a smaller movie that by all means gets popular because of who Wes Anderson then becomes. Had this been a one and done feature, we probably don't talk about it unless Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson kind of pop off in pretty big ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if this film didn't pop off the way that it did, we wouldn't be having Wild Wild West right now. So I'm glad this popped off.
Yeah, and
much like a bottle rocket does.
One thing to note real quick is not only is this the debut of Wes Anderson's career. Again, he had, I believe, a short film version of this in, I want to say 94, which premiered at some film festivals. It goes on and it follows this trend of indie movies kind of taking a step forward at the time. Of course, you have films like Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs from Quentin Tarantino. You have Kevin Smith making Clerks and Mallrats. You have other directors starting to get their careers, I guess, kind of, this is the start of their careers. Robert Rodriguez, of course, with some of his films from the 90s. This is, again, another example of a indie director coming forward and making his career in the indie movement of the 90s. And I think what I found so interesting about this movie is how unlike, and this is going to be my hill to die on right here, this is a good movie that doesn't feel like a Wes Anderson movie at all. This is the least feeling Wes Anderson movie in its tone, its aesthetic, its comedy, and just its approach to characters and their eccentricities. This has hints of it, and you can see where it will develop. But if I had to compare this to anything, this felt way more like a Coen Brothers picture.
Yeah,
in like
that's
kind
a
of
surprisingly apt description.
Yeah,
it felt a lot more like a Fargo,
Raising Arizona, any of those from the 90s, even a little bit of shades of Big Lebowski in some of its ridiculous characters. What I find so interesting is you see the early development of Wes Anderson here without maybe the tools of what then makes Wes Anderson within the next kind of 5 years. He's really constrained by his budget in this movie, and the characters tonally feel very different. This is a very different feeling movie in Wes Anderson's career.
Yeah. I have a similar sort of hill. This is definitely while it is an enjoyable film and a fairly lighthearted film, considering the sort of subject matter, which isn't that crazy. I mean, they're burglars, but they're robbing places like cold storage and libraries. So it's really not that. No one really ever dies. And if they do, it's never really, gory and criminal. But this film definitely is a first sort of film. There are certain elements that are very definite Wes Anderson, I guess, mannerisms from the get-go, especially in the way that titles are shown and, certain angles, especially top-down shots, which I have a lot to say about because I really love them. But there are certain elements that, Wes hasn't found his full footing as a director yet, and that's not any dish on the movie itself. It's more in the way that the movie is created. Mm-hmm. But I wonder what watching this film, it made me wonder what audiences might have thought of this movie when it was in theaters, and whether they thought the same thing that we might now with, 20 plus years of Wes Anderson films to like look on and be like, okay, this is where this sort of thing from Bottle Rocket developed into this in Royal Tenenbaums, or this is where this developed in, these other films. So it's interesting to look back at a first work after so many years. I mean, it was the same thing with Raising Arizona with Nick Cage's career.
Yeah. And similarly to that, like you said, with Nick Cage there at the very end, we do get to also see the development of actors kind of coming into what will be their wheelhouse. Owen Wilson gets to play the little bit more eccentric but down-to-earth character, while Luke Wilson plays it very much like the straight guy in this movie, which is true archetypes that they'll embody a lot through their career. You see kind of where their sensibilities lie. I guess that comes with the fact that Owen Wilson helped write this movie, so he probably played to what he knew his strengths as an actor were, along with his own brother's strengths. So they knew, and it feels very collaborative. This one, I feel the stamp more of Owen Wilson in this movie than let's say a Wes Anderson. I feel some of that Owen Wilson comedy come through, especially with this character. And before we go on, I just want to mention, of course, out of the 64 people in the tournament, we have 4 from Bottle Rocket who made it in. Those 4 are the characters of Anthony Adams, which is played by Luke Wilson, Dignan, which is played by Owen Wilson, Abe Henry, which is played by James Caan, and Bob Mapplethorpe, who is played by Robert Musgrave. So those are the 4 characters to kind of keep in mind. And before we go any further, Branson, I do want to ask you, just kind of going back to the actual tournament, who do you think is a possible favorite in this tournament? Again, they all have different matchups, so you can't pit them one against each other. Who do you think, though, could make noise and kind of advance maybe further than people are expecting?
Ooh, further than people are expecting.
Yeah. Do you see any of these maybe getting to the Sweet 16?
Ooh.
Sweet 16 is not trademark. Oopsie. I cannot call it the Sweet 16s. That is March Madness. I got to call it the Royal 16. I'll have to think of a name before that comes out.
The Royal 16. That's not too bad.
That's not terrible. I'll have to think of something.
That's not too bad.
The stylish 16. Something that starts with an... We'll get there. I just realized if I say that March Madness can come out for me, it is not the Sweet 16. It's something else, guys.
Man, you really needed to make sure you were covering your butt there, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not getting sued by NCAA. That's a lot of money I cannot afford.
Yeah, that would not be great. Okay, so you're asking about the 4 characters in Bottle Rocket so far. Like, who am I, like, sort of pulling for? Who would be the most likely to be in the...
Yeah, who's someone you could see
16?
Moving forward pretty well, where you're like, this one could cause some noise in the tournament.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
regardless of matchup, you're just like, I think this person could actually do fairly well in this tournament.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, Anthony is a really compelling character, and there's a clear arc that he goes through, and he's obviously like a better person by the end of the film. So I think Anthony could do quite well. He's affable. He's fully likable. Dignan might do okay based on who he's paired up with on strictly a power level.
Okay, this is interesting because to me, Dignan has the case of getting to the Sweet 16. I legitimately think out of all the ones where it's a scary upset, I think Dignan has a chance. I think Adams is going to be hurt with the fact that this character is fairly straight-laced, and Dignan definitely gets to have more of the comedy in this film, and it's Owen Wilson in a very comfortable position where I feel like Luke Wilson grows as an actor, where Owen Wilson feels a little bit more defined from the get-go.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. It really depends on what kind of criteria we're going for. I could see it going either way. Really, the wild card, or the one that would surprise me, but I'd be pleasantly surprised, would be Bob Mapplethorpe. Of course, performed by Musgrave. But that would be an interesting one because he's sort of a main side character, if you could categorize it like that.
Yeah,
I think he's got some. I don't know where he is in the meta. Like, what's his tier listing? Like, where does he fall in comparison to Meta Knight?
Benefit of he's going to be in the lower section, probably more of like an 8 to 16 range, more likely.
Okay,
which means he has the possibility of, depending on a matchup, possibly doing it well if it's a character that maybe people don't like in maybe let's say a film that's less popular, like a Darjeeling Limited or something else like that. So I think he has a chance. Like I said, I think if I was to put my money, and of course this is without the bracket in front of us, because guys, we are pre-recording this, we're still prepping Wild Wild West to a little bit of a degree. So the matchups aren't fully decided. We do know who's going to be in the tournament. By the
time you're hearing this will be fully fledged.
Yes, this will be fully fleshed. We are shooting this 2 weeks early.
This is like preseason predictions.
Exactly. This is 2 weeks early before the tournament even begins. So I'm going to say, if I just liked anybody's chances, regardless of matchups, I like Owen Wilson's as Dignan's chance. I think this is a character that's really easily to root for, and it just has so much of the comedic beats. And to be honest, getting into more of our discussion on the movie, he's also just my favorite character in the movie. I think he's so funny in this movie. Like,
yeah, he's a character that you love to. What I said about Dignan was that he's a very shrewd moron, and that is a dangerous combo that makes him really fun to watch and also to groan at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not, again, that character that feels like a typical Wes Anderson. It's kind of why I liked it a little bit more. There's something that feels a little bit more relatable because he's such a screw up, and it's in a way that isn't kind of in that stylized version of a Wes Anderson where there's very eccentric kind of screw up. It just feels like a down on his luck, just kind of low IQ type guy, just kind of going through life, trying his best and not realizing a life of crime just isn't going to get him far, especially when you're bad at crime.
Yeah, crime often doesn't pay when you're just not good at crime.
Yeah, which is his character. He is not very good at his jobs. That's a defining thing in this movie. Even with, like, I believe, is it Abe Henry, who is the guy that they're all working for?
Yeah, Mr. Henry.
Yeah.
They're sort of working for him. They're not at first, and then they are.
They start working for him. But doesn't Owen Wilson's Dignan, he is working for him at the lawn company or whatever it is. And then he gets fired. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, like I said, this guy's just kind of a continual just kind of screw up in a sense. Like, he just doesn't have a particularly strong work ethic, and he just, like, his mind is too all over the place to focus on any one thing, and he has aspirations way above his pay grade.
Yeah, that and delusions of grandeur.
Very much so. And Branson, kind of just going into this movie to start, what are the scenes to you that you really gravitated towards in this movie?
Man, I mean, one of my favorite sequences in the whole film is just while they're at the hotel and Anthony is getting to know Inez, which is a interesting dynamic at first. Well, it's an interesting dynamic throughout, but there's a lot going on when they first meet, and we'll talk more about that when we get to it, sort of speaking about the movie naturally. But their relationship is really interesting, and it's an unexpected sort of character development path for Anthony, because it's clear that, you know, Anthony's not satisfied being a co-conspirator with Dignan doing all these small-time robberies, but he doesn't really have a hard and fast reason to get out. Like, he doesn't have an excuse yet to not do this.
Exactly.
And then he meets Inez, and it finally gives him the reason to make that first step across the threshold to be, you know, a grown-up.
Exactly.
Last.
What I love so much about this character of Adams, who I think Adams works largely because of how well Dignan works. The reason it works is because they're good
foils for one another.
Yeah, because one of them's so immature and the other one is growing up, and we see that juxtaposition between the two. One of my favorite scenes, it might be my favorite comedic beat in the movie, is the very beginning where he's leaving the asylum or whatever, the hospital. Yeah. And it's Luke Wilson's character going out, and then you see Dignan trying to get him to come out this way, like through the window. They see the therapist sees it, and he's just like, you can just walk out the door. And he's just like, yeah, but my friend, just this whole thing, like, I'm just going to do it to make it easier. It's just one of those things it establishes Adam's character really well, in the sense that, like, he just kind of does things for Dignan where it's just like, it's easier to just be with him because he's my friend than it is to go against him. And while these ideas are wild, I'm having to a degree fun doing it. So why stop it if it's not hurting anybody?
Yeah. And I was going to say, these ideas are more or less harmless until later when they're actually trying to like do actual crimes. But yeah, that first scene is really great. The film wastes approximately 0.07 seconds getting you actually into the film. It's a quick title card, that strong, bold font title card, Bottle Rocket. And then it's right into Anthony leaving the hospital and Dignan being a jittery fourth grader who just got the Ultimate Spy Handbook from the Scholastic Book Fair at his school, and is like, I'm doing all the things in this book right now. And like, that's the setup to the scene.
Yeah. This character has no shame. Like, he just goes for it in every scene and doesn't seem to understand how ridiculous a lot of his plots and motivations are. And there's a part of the film where other characters start to maybe go against him or start to just call him out for some of his ridiculous tendencies. And you see him respond in a less than positive way.
Right. Yeah. It's almost that the sort of idea where it's like, look, if you guys just stick it out with me a little bit more and a little bit more, like we'll finally get to this glamorous life of crime. And it just never happens.
Yeah.
It just never happens.
One of the things I found so interesting when watching this movie is Wes Anderson always has very defined supporting cast members, even if they're only on screen for like a minute. I didn't find that as much in this movie. This film feels a little bit looser in its writing styles than an other typical Anderson film, in the sense that sometimes characters kind of appear and disappear without much repercussions to the overall story. My first example being the sister element with Anthony Adams' character, or Luke Wilson's character, Anthony Adams, is very underdeveloped from where it starts in the film, where you're just like, okay, this is going to be him kind of trying to prove it. And it doesn't really come back in a particularly meaningful way, besides a few references here and there.
Right. Yeah. Something about that. I'm sort of drawing this connection now. It is sort of a red herring. Like, okay, maybe he will finally change for his sister. Like maybe he'll realize that that's what it's really about. And nope. No.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a no all around for him.
Interesting mislead in that sense. But his sister being present is still contributes. It's more contributes to his character than hers. Because it's sort of this sign that even this child can see not only how immature Anthony is at the beginning of the story, but also how immature Dignan is, because she does not like Dignan, and she makes it very clear.
And with that, it's her character services Anthony Adams, Luke Wilson's character. Like, it does that. One of the things that I think that we're going to notice in this diving through Wes Anderson films is sometimes the female characters are at times underdeveloped. In certain movies, it's much better than others, where those characters do feel fully realized. I'm thinking of like Gwyneth Paltrow in Royal Tenenbaums or Meryl Streep in Fantastic Mr. Fox. But a lot of the times they feel like they serve, and this isn't the case of the sister, it's more of the case of, how do you pronounce her name? Iris?
Inez.
Inez. It's navel gazing for our male protagonists, I feel like, is what at times it can come off that way. I'm not saying that's what it is the whole runtime, but there are elements where it is just this almost like art piece behind like a glass that he can't fully connect with, and they're there to be the object of the main character's like desires.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. They're more there as an object at first rather than like a fully realized character.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's the case in every Wes Anderson films. I just laid out a few where I don't think that's the case. Royal Tenenbaums does it really well, where I don't think those female characters are at all typically fit that. But there are characters like in this movie where I found the journey with Anthony Adams and Inez, I found it very one-sided, where I didn't feel like I got to really know Inez, but I got to know Anthony Adams' relationship with Inez, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't really get to know her. You get to know her a little bit later, especially once she is using Rocky to translate as they're having like difficult conversations. But definitely at first, it just seems like Anthony is kind of drooling over himself because a woman is here.
Yeah, and the moments that she does get, because I'm going to push back even a little further on with you on this point, is they're all in service to the main character. We never get moments where it's just like, all right, who is this character completely disattached without Adams in her life? That's where I found it maybe a little disappointing in this film, where I'm just like, I think there was more to do with this character of Inez, but ultimately it just kind of leads into this way where her role in the film is to strengthen Anthony Adams' character arc. And that's, again, not to come, I don't think that comes from necessarily maybe a misogynistic viewpoint by Wes Anderson. I'm not saying that at all. It just comes to sometimes show that sometimes characters are there to specifically serve the main character, it kind of feels like, and that they then become underdeveloped. That was a trope that I found in this movie frustrating at times, where I'm just like, this could have been developed a little bit more, because it's also not a long movie. It's less than 90 minutes. So even if you had given her like an extra minute or two, that goes a long way in just establishing a character. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a little bit more from her, because there's so many other characters that are so well defined with little screen time. Luke Wilson and Owen Wilson's other brother, I'm blanking on his name, is in this film as the kind of bully. And I'm going to pull up his name right now because I believe it's Andrew Wilson is his name. Yeah, Andrew Wilson, who plays Future Man in this movie.
Yes.
Slash
I love
John
that his name is
Mapplethorpe.
Future Man. That's
His
the name
character
of the,
is on screen.
That's the name of the drummer from Bela Fleck and the Flecktones.
Yeah. This character is on screen for maybe 2 minutes in total. And he's a pretty well-defined character for his just 2 minutes. You seem to know as much as you need to know about him in this movie, where it's just like, my issue with that then is it's like, okay, this isn't just a story following these three main hooligans. It's a film that is able to have more to say with its supporting characters and just doesn't give it to, arguably, it's the fourth lead in this film. I would say she's the fourth lead in this film.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I agree.
So that's where I kind of found it frustrating on my side, where I'm just like, that felt like something that felt very underdeveloped. And if you read a lot of people's critiques on Anderson, that's a theme that comes up a bit, is his portrayal of women. Again, I haven't even seen all the films recently, again, so I can't comment on that specifically. I'm just saying for this film, that became very clear for me. Did you think otherwise, or is there maybe a little disagreement here, or are we kind of in the same vibe?
I only a slight disagreement, I guess. I mean, nothing too crazy, but I mean, like I mentioned, I agree with you that it takes a long time for her to get really individual characterization. And it really only happens when she and Anthony are like having an argument, which happens later. And there is like a fair amount, and she finally does have the opportunity to kind of explain her goals and her wants and her desires. It does come a little late, and it's not as flushed out as, maybe it could be. But I think it served a good purpose. But yeah, after the way that you kind of described it, it would have been nice to have like a little bit more there, or have more Inez in it to kind of like fully flush her out as a character, and then make the stakes for Anthony more important.
And I'll agree with you on this point that like, it does serve the story. I just thought there was a way to do it where it also developed her character a little bit more. Moving on from that point, I think the reason when I feel like that element is a little underdeveloped, the character that I thought struggled for me, and it's one of the ones why I think regardless of matchup, he's going to be hard, at least on my side. I don't see myself getting him out of the first round, is the character of Anthony Adams, played by Luke Wilson. My issue with it is he plays it really straight in this movie. He is the ultimate kind of straight man, and it works, but it also doesn't make his character particularly memorable. I think compared to some of the other Wes Anderson leads you have, this one kind of feels really easily forgettable. There's just not a huge part. And I think it's also just based on the fact that like, it's just this character's in Arrested Development and it's a girl that pulls him out, and that's where we go. And that's the story. And that's really all that's given to that arc. So I didn't find that arc as maybe satisfying as others would, where I found Digman's specific arc more rewarding because he goes from something very much at the beginning to, I guess, learning by the end, which for that character feels way bigger.
Yeah, he actually does learn.
Mm-hmm. Where it just feels like Luke Wilson starts the kind of the same way he ends, where it's just like, I get that he's in Arrested Development at the beginning, but it doesn't feel like he makes this huge character change, which is fair. You don't have to have a character make this huge overarching character change for a story to be effective. For this one, it was just that it was so minimal, in my opinion, and it was so focused on a relationship, and it didn't really explore. I thought to develop that character, there should have been a little bit more explanation with Dignan's character and their relationship, where either it's more of a moment of reconciliation or it's a moment of, I guess, a fallout and reconciliation. Something that really definitively showed how this character has changed his relationship with Dignan. Because I think by the end of the film, it doesn't feel like his relationship with Dignan has changed largely. And I think that's kind of what you needed to believe in this film, was like Dignan was such a different character of Anthony Adams that there has to be more of a grander shift in how their friendship evolves. I didn't get that in this film. Yeah,
you get like a taste of it, I think, when they do finally have like a falling out after they leave, and it's revealed that it's revealed that Anthony gave their money to Inez.
Yeah,
but it's not it doesn't fully feel like it has lasting effects, which is a bit strange.
Agreed. It doesn't feel like that fallout becomes really addressed in it. And that's, again, sometimes that's just the tendencies of you're making an indie movie with a really small budget. You don't have the time to shoot everything and get everything in there. Or sometimes you have to cut stuff and maybe it just doesn't serve a greater overall purpose. There could be so many scenarios of why it just didn't work. It was just that, like, in this film, those were the things that I noticed. And they were things that I think Wes Anderson, it's again, the thing when we talk about a young director, it's the reason we start from the beginning in this Wild Wild West series, is because we want to see how a director develops, which means how they address maybe some of these criticisms I have, or maybe things that other people had, how they either dig their feet in and stay kind of stagnant and don't develop and just like, this is the style, or how that style develops. And I think in the case of Anderson, the style develops greatly, aesthetically, stylistically, but also just character wise. The characters feel more fleshed out, even though these characters in Bottle Rocket are probably the most grounded types of characters we get in Wes Anderson films, especially recently, where a lot of those characters become so heavy on their eccentricities and behavior. These aren't. These are people you know.
Yeah.
We all have somebody who is kind of like a Digman in our life. Not exactly that, but you do have that one friend.
Mine is Ben Friedman.
Yeah, and mine's is Ben Friedman as well. I'm my own worst enemy.
You're your own Dignan.
Yeah. So with that all said, going into this, the reason Owen Wilson's character works for me so well is because he does get to have a bit more of a interesting arc, and that's directly related to, I think, the moments that make
goes more places.
Yeah, and I think the reason they do it is they give him such a great foil with Bob Mapplethorpe.
Yes, they do.
He is excellent in this movie. His character, portrayed by Robert Musgrave, is really entertaining, and it's such a great comedic foil for these two to have their back and forth in a way that feels humorous and in that kind of style that we like of a Wes Anderson, where it can have moments that are a little bit darker comedically, while also getting to be grounded in just like, these are two characters struggling, and they're at this point in their lives where they meet each other and they kind of just have to get over each other's stuff and work together. So it's this interesting dynamic between these two that allow them to kind of just be at odds throughout the film and get over those odds. It feels like there's more that they have to do in this film.
It's interesting because certainly in the second act, Bob is more or less the fully grown and realized sort of person. And Anthony's the one that's kind of in this transitional, like, I'm starting to be grown up, and Dignan's still the one that's like sort of digging his heels in as far as like, look, this crime thing's going to work. This burglary thing is going to work. And it takes him a little bit longer to do it. So like lining up Bob and Anthony and Dignan all together, you see like an interesting gradient of where characters are.
I agree with that. I agree with that statement fully. And like I said, I think there are some really good comedic beats between the two. The scene where Dignan finds out that, I love where he's like, our car's been stolen, even though it's not their car. Like, he just can't seem to grasp this understanding that like he sees everything as ours, not there's nothing possessive about it. It's just communist. Like, it's this very much like one for all, or all for one for all. No, that's not the right way to phrase it, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's the approach of like,
what you're laying down. Yeah,
it's the approach of everything's theirs until something's Owen Wilson's character, and then it's his.
Yeah. What's mine is yours, or what's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Thank you for summarizing.
I got you. We finished each other's sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly. What was the moment for you that I think, what is the moment for you where you saw something interesting in the filmmaking? Because I think, like I said, this one for me struggles because, not struggles, but it's interesting to watch because it's so non-Wes Anderson. But then there were moments where I watched it and I'm like, that feels like something in line with what I like that Wes Anderson brings to a film. It's not a bad thing. Let me say this also, because I feel like I've been hitting this point and maybe it's coming off wrong. It is not a bad thing for the directors to change stuff up stylistically and not have a feel to their movies where it's like, this could have been directed by anybody. That's not a bad thing inherently. I think with this one is there's something that Wes Anderson can bring, even in just his writing, that feels very human and real, where this one is so outlandish, cartoonish, that it doesn't hit that until there's certain character beats that happen. For me, that character beat is towards the second act, towards the end of the second act, where Anthony Adams finds out that his girlfriend is not going to come with them. And it kind of leaves him wallowing in his own grief. That felt like a very human moment from Wes Anderson. Was there an example for you where you're just like watching that and you're like, that's a moment that feels very character driven, or just whatever, even just this is Wes Anderson's, what I like that Wes Anderson brings?
Yeah. I mean, as far as characters and writing is concerned, I think Wes Anderson, even in this film, it is a little bit more toned down, as you were saying, Ben. But I think in this film, there's and all Wes Anderson films, there's a certain amount of what I think I've mentioned this when we talked about Royal Tenenbaums as well, but I'm not quite sure. There's a certain degree of what I'm calling hyper real characters, where they are, human and they're normal people, but their actions and reactions to things are on this scale that I don't think a lot of people, react that way, or like perform actions in a specific way. And that's always interesting to see. I mean, I think in Royal Tenenbaums, like looking at those two, where Royal Tenenbaums is like quite a few years later, I think 5 years later or 6.
Royal Tenenbaums comes out in 2001.
2001. So
that would be a 5-year difference.
Yeah, 5-year difference. Like the characters make a little bit more of an eccentric sort of method of interpreting the world around them. And Bottle Rocket, it's mostly Dignan who is the one who has that sort of mindset, and the other characters around him sort of elevate how zany Dignan's schemes are.
Yeah, you're right. Dignan gets to play it so outlandish that everything in comparison to him feels grounded.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. And I mean, having that sort of comparison, I think is something important to have in storytelling. And then as far as like filmic, like the process of making the film, there are some shots that are just beautiful in this and like so intentional. Some of my favorites are the top-down shots of tabletops. There's so much detail in them, and the set dressing is so focused and aware of, okay, this is the mini story that we're trying to tell. Here, okay, bingo square for all y'all that are keeping score. Corridor Digital, in a video where they talked to Adam Savage of Mythbusters and Tested, he was talking about how when he was making models for Star Wars, as he was assembling, he'd kit bash a whole bunch of different models, and then as he'd paint them, it'd be like, okay, this air vent right here has a rust streak on it because it stopped working for this reason, and this right here is a little bit loose because a stray meteorite hit it. It's like he's telling all these little miniature stories within the larger story. And I think the tabletops are another great example of that on a maybe a smaller scale, because it's not, an air vent in Star Wars. It's just a tabletop. But there are all these little details that are so interesting and reward, watching them again. They reward an attentive viewer, I think, with just little fun details. They're chock full of character. They're really unique, and they establish, that's one, I think, consistent tone and theme that Wes Anderson has kept with the top down tabletop, or the top down view of something that's going on, and how how vibrant and how alive and lived in sets are. Where everything feels like you're in a what are they called? In an I Spy book, almost.
Okay.
Like a toned down I Spy book.
Interesting. I had kind of the difficulty with this film where, due to just and this is, I'm coming off overly harsh on this film. I quite enjoyed this film. My issue with it was I thought there were even moments in it where I just thought, and this is the issue when it's somebody's first film, it's amateurish feeling. Like, that's what I thought a lot of this film, where I'm just like, I get it. I like it. I like some of the details he's adding in and what you were talking about. I think you're right. And that does develop. I praised the heck when we talked Royal Tenenbaums about just the little details of the house that they live in, how much that is able to enact their story. What I found with this one is, even hearing you talk about it, I know what you're referring to, but it didn't inform my watch on the movie. Where Royal Tenenbaums, it's like those little details kind of lived within me subconsciously while watching the movies, that I was aware even if I wasn't actually paying attention to them. They inform the story. These are like, they're details to me, and they're details where if I can go, this is one of those ones where if I go back and watch it, I'll probably notice a little bit more thematically and with those details, how they enhance the story. In this case, though, it was just one of those ones where they didn't affect me in a way that I just noticed them. Before we move on, we're just going to take a little break right here and go to commercial. So we'll be back in a few seconds to finalize our thoughts on the Bottle Rocket and get to the great debate. So we'll be right back.
See you in a sec.
And we are back from commercial break. So, Branson, before we kind of get out of here, let's just kind of hit some of our final thoughts, but specifically, let's dive into the element of this film that we haven't talked really at length at all, which is the heist in this film.
Yes.
The heist is very funny. Like, crazy funny.
You're talking about the final heist. The cold storage.
You're right. The heist in this film is really funny because the first one is so terribly planned that it's kind of great. It's just guys who have no clue.
They almost fall apart.
Yeah, it's guys who have no clue how to pull off a heist doing heist. It's kind of like if Ocean's 11 was done at a convenience store and was still done poorly. Is how I would describe their heist for the first plan, where it ends with them just kind of like, I forgot exactly what happens in the heist, but it just ends with them like they're basically found out. There's no cover for them. Their cover's blown. Just all these things. It's ridiculous.
Moving around without letting people know they're leaving their posts. Their safe cracker guy can't crack a safe. He's like, I'm just off it today, man. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, they have Bob's, who's just the getaway driver, and the only reason he qualifies for a getaway driver is he's the only person they know with a car.
That has a car?
Yeah. It's really funny heist. The end one is obviously the more memorable of the two heists. Just because this one goes in a lot of ways where it's like, oh, they're pulling off a perfect heist. This can't last for more than like 5 seconds. Right. And then it just like falls apart so quickly, where it's just like, oh, you didn't account for that. Oh, you didn't think about this. Oh, Owen Wilson's character is just now doing this. Like, there's just so much. Lunch. Yeah, it's just like there's so much poor planning in it, which is, of course, going to happen when you just have nobody's an idiot just planning this heist. Mm-hmm. And it goes so wrong so quickly in a really darkly comedic way. And
the best part of it is that while they're performing this heist and performing it very poorly, Bob's house, and Bob is pretty well off because his parents are pretty well off. Bob's entire house is getting robbed by Mr. Henry, the mastermind behind this whole thing, who is like put Dignan in charge, and the guy who like Dignan swears by. He was so great. He helped me out with all this stuff. And Mr. Henry's robbing them while they're making complete fools of themselves.
Exactly. It's the perfect kind of double cross for somebody of Abe Henry, where you get the idea that he is actually a criminal and he actually knows what he
knows what he's doing.
With that all said and done, Branson, because I think you summarized my thoughts on the heist perfectly. Those are kind of my final thoughts on this film. It's a film that it's just really interesting to see. This is where Wes Anderson starts. And this is him formulated in a way that doesn't feel fully of what he becomes, but you see the shades of it. This is very much like this is the shades of something special that will come. That's how I describe Bottle Rocket. Those are kind of my final thoughts.
I just found something that I wrote down that I forgot to mention about the heist at the cold storage. The cold storage heist is basically 90% of GTA 5 heist attempts.
It's very true.
Everything goes wrong. Everything goes completely up in flames. And then you get busted.
Very much agree with that.
And then the rest of your party, I don't know, forces a disconnect so that you're the only one that gets dinged. I don't know. It's been a bit since I've played GTA.
Any final thoughts before we move on to our last segment of the show?
Yeah, the ending is particularly it's strangely satisfying. With Inez and Anthony still together, Bob in an okay place after being robbed, and Dignan in jail for an amount of time that fits his dumb crimes. He's only in jail for 2 years, I think is what they say.
Yeah.
He's allowed visitors, and it seems like he's actually learned his lesson that
he's grown.
Crime doesn't pay, especially if you're an idiot.
Yeah, that's the theme and key lesson to take away from this film. Crime does not pay if you are an idiot. And with that all said, we'll move into our last segment of the show, which, Branson, what is that?
That would be
the Great Debate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great Debate. You know how it works already. I have a question. Branson has a question. We duke it out. We see who has the better answers. Branson, I went first. You went first last week, actually, so I'll go first this week.
Yes, you have the floor.
This is maybe one of the worst conceived heists in film, with just how everything goes wrong, how poorly it's planned. Take them all out. Who are 3 movie characters who could perform, if they all came together, would perform an even worse heist?
Ooh, would perform an even worse heist.
Yeah, they would do their job even worse.
Okay. Then my answer will be about who could perform the best heist, but I'll answer mine back to back. I think it will be more comedically salient to the structure of this segment if I say who would make the best first and then the worst. So I think the 3 that would make the best heist. Well, I mean, obviously, Ben Franklin Gates of National Treasure.
Good choice. Good choice. Good choice.
I mean, they stole the not only the Declaration of Independence, but also the president's book.
And the president.
And the president.
They kidnapped the president.
That's right. Yeah, they kidnapped the president. They go on a little spelunking trip. So Ben Gates definitely is number 1. I think that Mark Ruffalo's character from Now You See Me, I can't remember what his name is.
He's the FBI agent. I don't think anybody knows his name.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo's FBI agent from Now You See Me. Because, I mean, he's a magician, and according to a YouTube video made by someone who I'd actually really like to get on the podcast to talk about Now You See Me, they're just actual wizards. Or all just like they actually perform like straight up Harry Potter magic.
Yeah.
His name's Dylan. Mark Ruffalo's character is named Dylan.
That's an impressive pull. I would have never come up with that in about
so
500
FBI
years.
agent Dylan, whatever the heck. And then Cobb from Inception.
Is Cobb Leonardo DiCaprio's character?
Yes.
Okay.
Either Cobb or Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, who I can't remember his name, but I remember Cobb.
So those are your three best. Go your three worst.
All right. 3 worst. I mean, we're going like any movie, no matter how ridiculous it is.
Sure.
Okay. Who? Ooh. Well, this is so difficult. Because there's so many, you have so many good choices. Who could perform a worse heist than Dignan and Anthony and Bob? Here, I'll let you do your 3
My
best, and then I'll think of my worst.
My 3 best are pretty easy. You always need the brains of the operation, someone who's going to get it done, and someone who's going to outsmart everybody in the room. You have to have basically the Danny Ocean prototype in a thing. I'm not going to go Danny Ocean. I am going to go a guy who would mastermind it perfectly to the little last details and know everything he needs to know about it before the heist starts. That's Batman. I'm picking Batman. He's going to be the perfect one to start it off.
Which portrayal of Batman?
Just because it's fresh on my mind, I'm going to go Pattinson's because that's the most
It's pretty detective-y.
I'm going to go Mask of Phantasm Batman, Kevin Conroy's.
Ooh.
I think that one works a little bit better on a team. Given that his history with the Justice League and the TV show, which is based in that real world. So I'm going Batman as my start. My second one, you need somebody who is going to... Here's the interesting thing. I could go Loki from the MCU. The issue is I also know he's going to double cross everybody. But in terms of actually pulling off the heist,
he could totally do it.
He could do it. The issue is a perfect heist. What is a perfect heist if the person gets away from stealing with you, which Loki very much well could. I'm going to put Loki in there because I have a feeling Batman would be able to know how to deal with him. Like Batman is going to have a knowledge that Loki is going to betray them at some point and has already had a counterintuitive plan to deal with that. The third one is you need the person. There's always that person in the one who's always seems like they're well connected, can get you kind of into anywhere and just seems to know anybody. I am going to go, and I do not know her name, so I do apologize. Anne Hathaway's character from the Princess Diaries. She is royalty. She can get you kind of anywhere. Now, true, why would a princess need to be stealing this type of large money or anything in a heist? Take that, and what is the word I am trying to look for? How did I blank on that? Or suspend your disbelief. There we go. Suspend your disbelief. If she's there, she's going to help you get into anywhere. So my heist team is Loki, Batman, the princess from the Princess Diaries, played by Anne Hathaway. Those are my 3 for the best.
That's pretty stacked. All right. For the worst, I'm going to start with Carl Spackler from Caddyshack.
Is
that's Bill Murray's character? He's the groundskeeper.
Okay.
Constantly gets one-upped by a rodent. And I feel like he just would not do very well. Are we doing animated characters too?
Anything that's a movie. Anything that's a movie, so you can pick animated.
Oh man. Oh my goodness, that opens up a whole realm of possibilities. Oh my goodness. I would say maybe Emmett from the Lego movie. Definitely pre being a master builder. He would totally screw everybody up.
Good pick. You got Chew. Who's going to be the third to take it home and ruin this completely? No chance of redemption with these three.
Well, obviously the leader of the crew has to be Johnny from The Room.
Okay.
I mean, need I say more about Johnny? he would totally derail the entire thing.
Perfect. That's a good
His
list.
plan would be extremely convoluted.
I think I have you up this week.
Oh,
so right. I'm going to keep the same archetypes that I had. The person who can get you in anywhere. Who's the person that could get you in nowhere?
Nowhere
would be this case. I am going to go for that. There's a few brewing in my mind, but ultimately, who's going to be somebody that cannot get you anywhere? However hard they try, whatever they do, they're just going to mess it up. They're not going to allow you to get to the place you need to go. I am going to say, in that sense, it is going to be, get ready for this. I just need to look up and confirm the name. Clark Griswold.
Oh, yeah.
I think there is... No, sorry, not Clark Griswold. Oh, my God. It's Eddie Griswold.
Oh.
Eddie.
Yeah,
Clark is Chevy Chase's character. Yes. Eddie Griswold is going to screw up the whole operation. Are they brothers? Is the last name Griswold?
No, he's cousin Eddie.
Cousin Eddie. Yeah. He's going to be the one. Talking about. But cousin I know, Eddie. Is he related to Chevy Chase, or are they is that related through the mother? I forgot in the first movie.
I think he's related to Beverly D'Angelo's character.
Okay, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Regardless, it's going to be the guy who thinks he can get you in anywhere and can't get you in nowhere is going to be Uncle Eddie from the Vacation series. My second one is I now need the person who is going to manipulate and do everything in their power to try and get you into places. The guy who deals in wheels. The person who cannot do this successfully and would just be such a detriment would be Dory from Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. Her good. Forgetful memory is going to cause some problems.
Yeah,
in naturally. This. And just like I said, she's too unfocused. She's undisciplined. She's a fish. How's she even going to deal with the out of water situation? There's just too much wrong with this. My final one is I need my captain, and the captain who's going to really I need my safe plan. Who is somebody who is going to burn this all down in case somehow those two pull it off? He's in a movie, technically, even though it was a TV show first. SpongeBob SquarePants, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Patrick Star.
That's okay.
Patrick Star is going to do it perfectly in the sense that there is no way my team can come close to assembling it. We saw in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Patrick, to get the crown, they had 10 days. Patrick negotiates them down to 5. This is the guy I need on my team to make sure this does not happen.
This heist fails.
Yeah, he is the guy. He's my key. He is the ace in the hole I somehow know if Uncle Eddie just kind of stupidly lucks into everything and Dory's charisma gets her somewhere, Patrick Star can blow it all down. So that's my pitch for my 3 who are not going to get you in.
Nice.
And that's
the cast of Notions 11.
Yeah. And that's the great debate. And that's our show this week. Before we leave, Branson, I believe you have an announcement to make that I'll let you make.
Oh, yes. This will be my last episode for a little bit. I just wanted to take a break for the month of March. Jalal will be filling in for me.
Yes.
And he's he and I are actually really similar. So that will be fun. And then circa April, I think I'll be back. We're actually going to Disneyland in April. I think I'm just dropping this now on you, Ben.
Oh, that's funny because I'm going next week.
Oh, shoot.
I'm going in March. Yeah, I'm going in March. How long are you guys there for?
We'll be there for the weekend, so I think we'll still be able to record.
No, okay. That's kind of same with me. I'm there. I get into Anaheim Friday, and I'm only in the park Saturday. So I'm just doing the quick one day just to visit friends.
We'll be in there Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I can't quite remember.
Oh, nice. That'll be fun.
Yeah. So we found a really good pricing.
So
and we have some friends down there, so no need for a hotel. And that's like half the price.
You will be sorely missed.
Thanks,
Jalal, when I talk to him, is not only more than up for the job, he is excited to be taking over. So, and this is a guy who was at UC Irvine.
I'll still be the technical producer.
Yeah, you'll still be around. You're still going to have input, and I'm going to be bouncing off a ton of ideas. And Jalal, I'm sure, is going to be talking to you as well for some ideas.
So if you guys say anything to slight me, I'll burn you.
Yeah, and I think you're still watching the movies kind of along, just maybe not on the same like time days as we're watching it and all that. You'll probably take more of the audience.
I'll be keeping up. When I'm back, I will be perfectly up to date. So we'll be chilling. So just wanted to give that announcement. Jalal's very excited. He'll be joining us starting for our next episode, Rushmore. He's not a guest. He will be guest hosting. He will straight up be my co-host for the next few weeks. Bralal.
Yeah, he will be with us for the next few weeks. He's really excited. He'll be doing the whole series, it sounds like, with us. If you don't know Jalal, who listen to his episodes, they're very funny. He's
the Twilight episode is a lot of fun. Go listen to that one.
Also, specifically graduated from UC Irvine in the pep band. So he brings that energy, and he knows March Madness. He got to do some stuff with that. Like, he knows the energy and vibe that we're going for. And I think he's going to kill it this next 5 or so weeks.
Good color commentator.
Yeah, he'll be great at it. He's very excited to jump in. One more announcement before we leave. We'll be having some guests for the Wild Wild West. I'll be announcing a few more as we go on, hopefully, assuming everything works out planning wise. That's been the issue, is trying to get a solid time to record with people. Always has the issue. But I can announce one, and I'm really excited about this one. We are bringing in Mr. Jeff Snyder to co-host with us on the film Moonrise Kingdom for Wild Wild West. If you do not know Jeff Snyder's work, you do. If you're a movie fan, you do actually know Jeff Snyder's work. He is the guy that basically breaks probably a good 30 to 50% of all the scoops in Hollywood. You've seen his name attached with so-and-so is going to star in this movie. So-and-so is returning to this movie. Harrison Ford has been offered the role and has taken the role of Indiana Jones 5. I don't remember if that's one of his scoops. This is that guy. He is a very talented, very funny, very honest.
He hosts a podcast with Scott Mantz.
Yes, he is a co-host along with Perry Nemiroff, Scott Mantz, on the show For Your Consideration, with Scott Mantz did plug when he was on the show. Good friends with Scott. He is someone that when I was developing my writing style in college, I would read his things, because you've never heard a guy more honest and willing to share his opinion in a blunt, forward, and no holds bar way. He is so entertaining. He is so entertaining. I am so excited to have him on the show to talk Moonrise Kingdom. And I can't confirm
how big of a fan Ben was. I've seen him plagiarize his work before.
Thank you. Yeah. I am so excited to have him on the show.
You're not in college anymore, so it's okay.
I never plagiarized. Those are all false accusations. With that all said, I am so excited to have him on the show. Moonrise Kingdom is a movie that I know he quite enjoys, so it's going to be a fun discussion. And I hope next time I'm on for Rushmore, I can announce a few more guests. I'm working on it. We'll see what happens, but so looking forward to March. 27th, which I believe is when that Moonrise Kingdom episode will debut. One last thing before we go as well. For Wild Wild West, since we have to go through a lot of movies and we're trying to keep in pace with the March Madness and keep that same kinetic energy and not take 10 weeks to do this, starting next Monday. So for our episode on Rushmore, this episode drops on a Friday. 3 days later, we'll have our episode on Rushmore, and then we're going back Friday, and we're doing Monday and Friday for the next few weeks, dropping 2 episodes a week for this tournament. So thank you guys for listening. There's going to be way more details out there on Wild Wild West. I kind of summarized it because, again, this is pre-recorded. Jalal and I are going to do a full-on video explaining, breaking it down, color commentary. We're going to be involved in this. And
I'm glad that you guys are doing that because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around 64 bracket.
I know.
Spicy.
This bracket's been a hell to develop. With that all said, guys, welcome to Wild Wild West. We're in it, and we're going to be in it for the next few weeks. Good luck.
Let's go.
And let's see who comes out victorious.
Let's hope that it's more bearable than Cage Off.
All right, guys. Take care. This is Ben.
This is Bran.
Signing off. Take care. Bye-bye.
So long.